Da-da, 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 do.
Yeah, you
Drink
have
it
a new phone.
in. Not just any phone.
Hmm.
This is the Samsung S23 Ultra.
Ooh, Ultra.
Yes. This is, at least in the world of Samsung, probably the best phone you can buy.
Maybe we should put Ultra at the end of
It has a
Magical Talking Hat.
shit ton of cameras on it for some reason. Apparently, they're really good camera. Uh, as we all know, I have only ever had one cell phone that I got a little over a decade ago. And at the time, it was the highest end shit. Lil Wayne was pouring moderately priced champagne on it in commercials and everything. Now it is old enough, a lot of people didn't understand that it was still a phone. Uh, because I run them into the ground. But then when I get a new one, I get the coolest shit. Whatever's the newest and the most impressive, because I know I'm going to have it forever. So we are now sitting in the time period where I have the coolest shit. Within a year, I'll have a very good phone. Within a couple more years, I'll have one that works. And then eventually, I'll have one that it's not broke. So I'm just going to keep using it. And then by the time I'm in a nursing home, it'll be time for my third cell phone.
Hmm.
But for now, when I have the shit, I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth. Going around looking at people say, "Oh, you just have the S23 Plus." Oh, I've heard that's good. That kind of thing. And in fact, it comes with a S Pen.
A what?
It's just a little stylus, basically, but I can
Oh.
write on here with it.
Um, so you're not really in the habit of buying new shiny things, are you? I mean, you're not an early
No, no, no.
adopter.
I'm a very late adopter to everything, but with something like this and like with cars, well, actually not so much with cars, but often with electronics, I buy the newest thing because I'm gonna have it until it dies, and so I might as well maximize the length of time where it is still functional. My old phone was to the point that there were apps it wouldn't run, like straight up, like the marketplace would not allow me to download them.
Mm.
And it wasn't because my OS wasn't high enough. It's just because the phone was that sad. They're like, sorry, you can't have this app. Your phone is too sad. Um, and so yeah, when it comes to, especially with personal electronics, I'm like, give me the best thing because it's the only one I'm going to have for a very long time. Uh, and I stuck with Samsung. I really have liked Samsung. And to be fair, I'm still a late adopter in that even if it was time for me to get something new, if a phone had like just come out, I don't think I would fuck with it. What I probably would do is wait to replace the previous one until it had been out for the new one had been out for a few months to see. I don't like being the one to find out if it explodes or
Right, right.
if it is somehow worse than the previous and things like that. I want other people to do that part. Um, but yeah, this one has the S Pen. I don't know that I'll ever make use of it. It's surprisingly hard to get out of the case that I have for this phone. And I don't know that it's that useful, but it's neat to have it. And it just fits in there. So it's not like it's in the way. I know I have some friends who really love their S Pens. So,
Hmm.
um, I am adjusting. Some things are not the same. A lot of things are not the same. And I'm having to get used to that. So like some programs just straight up don't exist on this phone. A bunch of other ones exist that I don't want. Other versions of it. I only just this morning figured out how to get my old the program that I used for texting. And I like that much better than what the new one was. So I switched back this morning, and that's good. I've already been downloading some games because there are games that I can play that I either couldn't play or that like I could, but it would kill my battery in 5 minutes. You know, and I'm asking friends who have more recent ones. So now I started playing Tiny Bubbles, very fun game. I also have a game on here called Dragon Hills that I've had for years, but on my old phone, it was old enough that I tried it several times and it would crap out after like 10 seconds. Now it runs just fine. It's a much bigger phone. The speaker is way better. Last night I was listening to music straight out of the phone and it sounded so much better. That was actually sort of the final straw. My Apple Tunes was kind of fucked up.
Oh.
Like it would mostly work, but there were times where it's like I have this song in my library, I have it downloaded to my phone, and you just hang up trying to play it. And I was like, no, if you're fucking with my music, I can't do this anymore. So go to the Verizon store. Horrible experience as always. But I got through it after 2 tries. And now I won't have to go back for a long time. So that's nice. But I do like it. Yeah, I'm getting around to enjoying it. I try it'll do face recognition. And so I set it up to do that and it don't recognize my face. So but that's fine. I didn't really care about that part. I mean, and I can try again. I can try and retrain it or whatever. But like, it was pretty straightforward, and it even went so far like it's doing percentages, looking at my face, and then it's when it hit 70%, it was like, now take off your glasses, and so then do that. But then yeah, no, I don't know who my face is, but that's fine. I got the fingerprints, which is what I mostly use, so and that works just fine. I am happy with that. I am typoing a little more because since the phone's a different size, the keyboard's a different size a little bit. It actually messed up a lot of things because I had to re-log into like all my emails and stuff. And several of them, I was like, am I misremembering the password? And so I changed it. Then later, I'm pretty sure most of them were typos because I finally started hitting that show button. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I did not type the right thing. But yeah, so it's all working out. But I'm enjoying it so far. It's quite nice. Stupid amount of money. But again, if it holds me for a decade, probably a good deal.
Yeah, probably.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat Podcast, the only podcast who knows what's important out there, which is to celebrate. It's the start of Udi season, motherfuckers! Check it out!
What? How does one know it's the start of Udi season?
One gets cold and puts on a hoodie.
Oh.
It's not complicated. It's just.
But it can get cold and then warm again, and you know.
Yeah. But yeah, and if I had worn it just one day, then it probably wouldn't count. But I've worn this quite a lot lately.
Okay.
Keep in mind, not every day of Udi season is Udi weather.
Okay.
In the same way that not every day of autumn is when the leaves are falling, and not every day of spring is when bunnies are fucking. Actually, that one probably is not true. It probably is every day of spring, but whatever. Not every day of Christmas time is Hanukkah. I'm Tony.
And I'm William. And this is episode 656.
So your grandkid's a serial killer.
Yeah, that was, I mean,
Sorry,
that
were we not going to talk about that?
That photograph
your grandson's a serial killer.
Wasn't planned. It was absolutely by accident. And just going through the photos and whoa, what is this? But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny.
For
Have you
those of you who aren't the two of us, William sent me a picture of a very threatening looking Delmer with the caption "You'll float too, Grandpa." Um,
I mean, he looked like that, right? Kind of looked like.
I mean, yeah, no. The caption fit. It wasn't. There was not any disconnect there. It was very just yeah. Yeah, and for those of you who are like, oh, he grew up into a creepy kid. No, it's still what, two, something like that. Like it's not. He's at an age you would not expect that level of aggression to be visible,
Nope.
but it is.
There was. He's a funny kid.
Little Photoshop, give him a little clown makeup. And
Yep.
that's a metal cover right there. It's out in the woods too, isn't it? Like there's
Yeah.
leaves and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, that boy ain't right. For those of you just joining us, we have a hat, and it is magic in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. People write into that email with whatever they want, usually questions, topics, things like that, but whatever. The hat magically forwards email to us. We read them on the air, talk about them till we're bored. That's the entire bit. But the game has changed. We are now recording on Mondays.
For a while,
so
anyway.
when you see an episode, if something happened in the last 3 days, we will not talk about it. And if we do, time and space are fucked. Like, because we wouldn't possibly know. So like that thing that happened Wednesday, we don't even know about it yet.
Nope.
What if it's something really big happens on Wednesday? This is gonna be dark. Or it could be something really cool. I don't know. But nowadays I assume if something big happens in the world, it's dark.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Anyway, remember that time I won the lottery on Wednesday and then murdered all those people?
God, jeez.
Like I said, dark. Was in that order too. People were never sure what happened. Why? He was just like weirdly mad about winning the lottery and like mad at everyone. I don't know why. He just was swinging baseball bats around and yelling about late stage capitalism. Then he fell off that bridge.
Then he fell off that bridge. Oh, you didn't make it, huh? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, no, I was trying to do a version where I wasn't there, but I didn't want to bring guns into it. So it was a baseball bat. And murder suicide, I've heard, is hard with a baseball bat. Ow! 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 So I guess I fell off a bridge. If you know a better way to kill yourself with a baseball bat, Mr. Smarty Pants, I'd be happy.
I don't even want to think about
it. I do, because all I picture is like Looney Tunes. Like, it's not something that has an accurate visual image, because I do not believe it could be. Unless it's something where like you throw it off a cliff and then you jump after it and you really line up like when it's sitting there.
Right.
But
of course, then you could just have jumped off the cliff. That's
very true. And also I feel like when you're falling off a cliff, you don't have that kind of accuracy. A baseball bat's not that big. No, maybe you just have like a field of baseball bats. And somebody's like, why are you bothering? It's like to prove a point.
I suppose you could put the baseball bat, you could lay on the floor, put the baseball bat like over your neck, and then have some way that you could like drop weights on it so that it like crushed your neck. but I don't know how you do that.
This is hard. I mean, if you're gonna kill yourself, use something other than a baseball bat. That's our public service snub. Also, don't kill yourself.
Yeah, don't do that.
But if you're gonna, don't use a baseball bat. But don't at all.
You are
But
the worst.
especially not a baseball bat.
You are the absolute worst.
At dinner the other night, the dad said something. I don't even remember what it was now, but I was like, ugh, you foul man. And the kids cracked up that I called him that. All right. So how's your 4 days, 3 days, half a week?
Yeah,
You had some shit happen. I mean, among other things that happened is the reason we're now recording on Monday. So what's up?
Right. So school starts now, but it's practicum, which means that I'm, going to a site and I'm doing like some work that's normal. Sometimes I'm just sort of, sitting in. Sometimes I'm dealing with the client directly. Sometimes I'm doing, learning the procedures of the site or doing some other tasks that the site needs done that's still within the kind of the rules, because for example, I'm not supposed to go there and answer phones or do filing or anything like that. Whatever I'm doing, it has to be related
to your education,
right, to being a therapist and whatnot. But there are lots of things you do, well, for example, you might not only do you have a session with the client, but you have to, fill out paperwork about that session. You have to diagnose for a lot of people if they're going to get insurance. You've got to sometimes between sessions or after sessions, you need to work on things like a treatment plan. So there are, in fact, the breakdown is that what they want to see is that at least 40 hours worth of direct client contact, and you have to have 100 hours total. So that means 60 hours of all those other things. It doesn't have to be 40-60, it could be 50-50, whatever. But they presume you're going to have some things that you're doing that aren't just talking to the client, because like I said, paperwork and diagnosis and things like that. So
100 hours over 10 weeks, though, that's not a lot.
Well, no. Yeah, it's 10 hours a week if you break it down evenly. And one of the part where you're not sitting in front of a client, that's not the right way to talk about it. So 1 hour a week should be just like supervision, like you're talking to your site supervisor and they're giving you feedback and stuff. At least 1 hour. It can be more, of course. But so it's at least 40 hours in front of a client, at least 1 hour in front of your supervisor, and then whatever the balance is, you're going to be taking notes and diagnosing all the other stuff I said. So, but there are also certain class requirements. I mean, there is a textbook. It's not really it's a practicum textbook, which is kind of weird. And it's just full of a lot of stuff that, I mean, this isn't a textbook I'm going to have to read and take notes on. It's just, I can skim it and
just full of clip art. And it's like, what is Francine doing wrong in this picture?
Actually,
pointing for starters.
That would be more interesting.
Got her tongue stuck out.
That would
She's
be more
holding a sign at the patient that says, "You bastard."
I wish it was that. It's a lot of
that book.
It's almost like a handbook. It's almost like a generic handbook for not even just for practicums or internships. It's like there's a whole chapter about the history of the profession. There's a whole chapter about, a whole bunch of stuff we've already been over in the last 2.5 years, tons of times. So there's nothing. It's not going to be reading that I'm poring over because there's information in there I need. It's going to be, I'll probably skim it and just pick out the stuff that I think is relevant to our discussion or relevant to, I don't know what. And I might not, there might be some parts.
10 o'clock. Client came in bleeding heavily from the eyes. What should Dylan do?
Nothing like that is in the book, as far as I can tell.
In my book.
Well, I would like your book. That all sounds interesting.
A lot of
But no,
lot of
it's
eye
just
bleeding and calling clients bastards.
and reminding them that baseball bats are not effective
Yes,
suicide
yes.
supplements. But
If there are two things I could teach you, the first one, don't kill yourself. And the second one, if you're gonna disregard number one.
but I mean, like, there's one paper due like right in the middle of it, which doesn't have anything to do with. I mean, I don't. Some of the classwork, the classwork stuff they have is a kind of baffling to me. Like, why are we doing that? I mean, why don't we just going to the site, and doing the work? But it's supposed to be sort of a transition from the classwork to an internship. I'm not sure what the necessity is for that kind of thing. I mean, I can understand us maybe having a transition where we're not where we're being more supervised and not having that many hours, but we don't really need other stuff to do. We don't really need a book to read or a paper to write, and none of this stuff really is directly addressing what we're doing. So I'm not sure what that's about, but it's not too
If
much.
they don't
And
give you this kind of busy work, you'll just wander around, go out in the
see,
woods, put coins on the train tracks. And
that's what I mean, busy work. That's what it seems like. It just seems like
Mhm.
busy work, which we don't really need. But
Welcome to
anyway,
education.
but it is, I mean, it's fewer. So each quarter I've been having is like 8 credit hours, and which is a lot of time and a lot of work. And this is only 5 total. So
Oh.
it's going to be, I mean, there's going to be plenty of time to get to the site and do stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I don't think the class work stuff is really going to be that much of a distraction, although I think it's going to annoy me. I'm going to be thinking, because none of those hours are going to count, right? Whatever I'm doing for class
Oh yeah,
is not.
it's like homework, would say.
Yeah, it's just right. It's just sunk time, really. I mean, there's
But
going
you
to
don't
be
got a lot else going on, so it's fine.
there's going to be every week there's a 90-minute meeting with. So I have 2 supervisors. I have my site supervisor and I have a Capella supervisor, and we have like Zoom meetings with the whole my whole class, my whole section. It's 90 minutes of meetings every Tuesday. I think that'll be interesting and really helpful. But even the discussion for next week, I looked at what the instructions were and I was like, what, why are we doing this? And discussion, you only get like 17 points on it, but it looked like a thing that would take about an hour to do. It's like, why even do this? But that's how it's working out. I think it's still going to be really fun the next 3 months. A little stressful to make sure I'm getting all the time in and stuff, but I think it's going to be really great. I think internships even going to be even better, but of course the hour requirements there are going to be quite a bit more. So
You gonna get paid for that part?
well, so the site I'm working with, so that's something any site can do. They can pay you. I mean, or they cannot. I think Capella, the online school that I'm with is Capella. I think they would prefer not, and because they found that a lot of places that do that aren't being magnanimous. They want the person to answer the phones and clean the bathrooms and stuff like that. And so it ends up being a thing that gives the participating agency, makes them feel like they can get the person to do things that Capella would rather them not be doing. They'd rather them just be doing the work.
Treat it like an occupation rather than an education.
Sure. Now, my site, for a variety of reasons that I don't need to get into, I think they would like to be paying me right now, but that there's all kinds of financial reasons that might be difficult. So I'm perfectly fine with them. Like if they want to keep me on after the internship and just paying me then, that's fine. I mean, I'm in school still. But I think if they can find a way, they will. Yeah. If they could find a way to do it now, they would. But it's just
Me
Just a
either. They're
matter
just
of
like, oh, I dropped that dollar bill. That I can't bend down to pick it up.
but
There are ways. I'm just saying.
I sure, but it's the thing is, you
They
know,
just flip you a quarter and wink and say,
getting paid in this business. I mean, it mostly involves insurance companies, right? And insurance companies don't reimburse if you don't have at least a temporary license. And then you have to be your supervisor has to have a full license and a relationship with that insurance company. I'm just a student.
I
For
mean,
them to
don't get
pay.
me wrong. I wouldn't pay you to therapize either, but
So what I'm saying is that the way therapists typically get paid, it's not, you have there's offices here in town and lots of places that just have lots of people working there. Some of them not fully licensed, because so the place is owned by a licensed person, right? And then they supervise like 10 people who are temporary or have provisional or temporary licenses. And so that's how that firm can generate a pretty good revenue, because you've got 10 people working for this one person who is the one the insurance companies are working with to reimburse, see. And then I don't know what their pay structure is, if those people get like a cut or if they get some kind of a salary because that
I
person's
bet you go
generating so much.
find out.
Yeah, I probably will. But some
And then
places just
eventually you'll get a full license and have your own stable of grad students to do something. This is
maybe.
basically how the great novels of the 18th and 19th century Europe also were written. Very similar method.
So yeah, I'm not. So I'll worry about all that when I'm done with all this and I've got my provisional license and I can start. Maybe I'll work for someone else. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't feel like I have the bandwidth to really worry about that right now, because I just have to focus on getting through the next 9 months. And getting all the hours in is really important. And they have to be certain kinds of hours too. Like over the next 9 months, I need a certain number of hours in group co-facilitation. Well, I think I can also just lead the groups myself. So you got to do some group stuff, which is great, because I think I'm
I
gonna
love
really
group
like.
stuff.
I think I'm gonna like group therapy and leading group therapy. But
Hey, my name is William W. and I'm an alcoholic.
I'm not like the place I'm working with has a regular weekly group, so it won't be hard for me to get that experience.
Right.
So yeah, that's all started, and that's the reason, as Tony was saying, that's the reason we're doing this on Mondays, because so far it looks like I'm going to be available pretty much every Monday, maybe even clear through, but I don't know. After internship starts, we won't know. But for the next
No
3
one
months
will
anyway,
ever hire him for Mondays.
for the next 3 months anyway, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be available every Monday. So that's why we're recording now. But we're still posting on Thursdays, right?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I just remembered I because there was a change and because I don't trust myself, I put a calendar reminder for every Monday for recording. And just today I was like, I should also put a calendar reminder in for every Thursday to post the fucker.
Because you might forget.
I'm doing that.
But I mean, between when we recorded in here, as we discussed, Friday the course room was open, so I could kind of look at things. I didn't really do a lot of work. We did stuff with the kids and stuff over the weekend. That's where the photograph came from. But Friday and then today, it's just been, I guess school stuff. So not really anything else. I don't think I saw any movies or anything.
None, but it's spooky season. You got to get on that.
Well, so we watched Hill House and Midnight Mass
Oh,
again.
okay.
We watched both of those, but we also watched Bly Manor and Midnight Club, which are both of those are kind of, we enjoyed watching them again, but I
I
think it's
can't
going to be
ever decide if I'm gonna watch Midnight Club. I keep thinking I might, but I haven't gotten around to it.
I think the performances in it are good and some of the stories are pretty good, but it's not. I can see us in the future. Halloween time comes and we'll go ahead and watch Hill House and Midnight Mass again, but maybe not the other two. We are really looking forward to, his
Usher.
next one. Yeah, the House of Usher, and that's just in a few days. We hope it's good. But I think, so for the last several years, we've really been trying to watch maybe some horror movies we missed, or, Abby wants me to see ones that she watched when she was younger that I never watched. And some of those have been fun and some of those have been not fun. I mean, some time ago I saw like Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever, and I thought it was terrible, but I mean, we watched Halloween. I also thought that was not good, but for some reason I liked it better than the other stuff. I don't know
I'm
why.
very excited. The next Jordan Breeding long story shortish video is gonna be the Halloween movies. And it'll be this month. Probably not a coincidence.
So didn't he just do a Nightmare one? Or is
No,
that someone else?
he's done Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh,
It was from back in his Cracked days, and I've watched it several times. What you may be thinking of, CZ from CZ's
yeah.
World.
Yep.
Just did the timeline of Freddy Krueger, and I just watched that, and that is such a great sort of companion piece because it's more of an attempt to actually get a coherent story as opposed to the Jordan Breeding ones, which is sort of making fun of it.
I kind of want to watch
and that was good because he actually managed to, like, there were places where he's like, yeah, I don't know why it's like this now, but for the most part, like, he actually took, because that's the thing, like so many of these horror series, like every movie has a slightly different premise to it, even though it's the same villain.
Mm-hmm.
He managed to take the premise from the sixth one and actually have it make sense for the whole series. Mostly.
But it's like an hour and a half long or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Jordan's one is 2.5.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of movies.
I am interested in
some of his long story shortish ones are up to 3. I don't think he's gotten too much above 3 hours in them. But then there are ones, it depends on how much he has to say and how many movies. His Friday the 13th one was 3 hours. His Indiana Jones one was like just like an hour and 15 or something. And the Saw one, which is still my favorite. I go back and I watch the Saw one over and over. It was his first one on Crack. Is just a little over an hour. And I watch that one a lot.
I am interested in watching some of those things because I'm like you, I'm far more interested in kind of the world building and the lore and stuff than I am, because the fact of the matter is the actual films, however interesting and rich that might be, they mess it up with all of their bad filmmaking,
and they're just straight so much bad horror, even though I love it, has some real slow spots in the middle. You get tired.
But anyway, so we've kind of like we've kind of run out, because I mean we know what we'll like, what Abby will like more than me, but I'll watch it, there's pretty much nothing that I'll like that she won't like. There's just some things that she'll like that I'm not going to be interested in, but I'll watch. And there's some things that we're just not, neither one of us are going to be interested in. And so it's been several years where we've been doing this thing like lots of other people do around Halloween, trying to find stuff to watch. And so there's not, I mean, I know there's so many more films that we've never even, scratched the surface of, but I think it's probably the case that of the thousands and thousands of TV shows and films and whatever out there, there's probably only just a small number that's going to appeal, even to her. because
Yeah, it is hard to say because the horror genre is fucking booming.
yeah, yeah.
It is really having a renaissance these days, and there are tons of them.
But then you run
But
into
yeah,
the
a ton of
problem of,
them are also ones that you're not gonna like at all. Same with movies.
well, and some of them are perfectly fine. Like we'll watch them and we like them, but there's so much like six other ones we saw before. It's not very fun. I mean, it's not the film's fault. Like if we separate
Yeah,
that out, we can look at the film by itself and say this is actually pretty good. If we'd seen this film first before we saw the six other ones, we'd think it was really great.
yeah,
But now it's just kind of seems like a copy of other things, and it's too bad because there's good film craft there. It's just we've seen this story over and over, you know.
yeah. It's so weird, and I can't explain it, but like, and as somebody who doesn't like sequels and things and reboots and all that, I've talked before. Hell House LLC is arguably one of my favorite low budget found footage films. I think it is on that scale quite good. I didn't know it when I originally saw it. I thought it was bad, and then I saw a bunch more and realized that actually it's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
But it had two sequels. It was a trilogy. The second one, and the third one, pretty bad. For starters, they just sort of repeated, both of them just sort of repeated what the other ones did. But also the third one really tried to wrap up the lore, which I appreciate. But consequently, the movie suffered, and also the lore they created wasn't super great. Anyway, so the fact that I liked the first one, don't really care about the second one, and actively sort of think the third one's bad and don't particularly like it. I don't understand why I am very excited that there a fourth one is coming out later this month. And I've seen the trailers. It's the same guy who created all this stuff, but he clearly has been given a real budget, which is almost always a bad sign. Sorry, it's true. Give me some counterexamples, people. It's almost always a bad sign.
Yeah, almost always.
We call that the Mallrats effect. And also it's purporting to finally answer all the questions of the Hell House LLC movies, which yes is a thing that every late series movie claims, but in this case doesn't make sense because at least in my opinion it all was answered in the third one. So I don't know what there's left to answer. It also takes place in a different locale, but it's in the same universe and tied into the same stuff. So I don't know what the hell is that, but like I'm very excited about that.
Oh, well, I mean, like, so you're talking, when we talk about found footage, like that's the kind of thing that I mean, I don't know if Abby would be okay with found footage, but I just cannot get into that at all.
See, I was thinking about this the other day because I claim to love found footage, and then there are, for every one I talk about, there's at least 5 I've seen that I decided weren't worth talking about, and at least 10 others that like I started and I couldn't fucking cope. And I was thinking about this, and it's a silly thing. Because saying I like or don't like found footage films is like saying I like or don't like animated films. Found footage is a style, it's not a genre. Now, the style lends itself to certain genres, and there is a lot of commonality in a lot of them, but it is technically just a POV.
Well, I mean,
so it's kind of silly for you to say I'm not into it in the same way it's silly for me to say I am into it,
right?
Because it's not
I mean,
a thing.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is found footage in a way. Right? It's a letter from this person, and it's a recording from this person, and it's a journal entry from this person.
Or sometimes it's none of those, which is a great dovetail into a movie we watched, The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster.
Were you just talking about wanting to watch it? Or
yeah, it had popped up on Shudder, and so then we watched it on Friday.
How was it?
That is a very difficult question.
Oh.
Um, we'll get this out of the way up front. I hated it on a level I have not hated a movie watching experience in a long time.
Mm.
That 100% has nothing to do with the quality of the film. Partially, it has to do still with the fact that I'm transitioning my meds right now, and that's kind of crazy. But also, it's one of those movies that is very hard to watch for all the parts that aren't the horror movie part,
Mm.
because it is a serious, honest, unflinching look at the fucked up institutional nature of being a black person living in project housing in the modern age.
Mm.
And a lot of the movie is that. And I'm not saying it was done well or poorly. I'm saying separate from that, just having to go, well, I will say it's done well enough to bother. If it was done poorly and just basically looked like a black exploitation, I wouldn't be upset, but like it really made me uncomfortable. So early on, I was like, I think this is a really good movie. I just hate it. But I'm not entirely sure it's actually a good movie. And this brings up an interesting question, because I don't think it's for me. I think there are people who would watch this movie and feel incredibly seen.
Mm.
And there is tremendous credit to this movie for saying and showing and looking at things that don't get looked at and talked about enough. Like that sort of unflinching honesty has value in and of itself.
Sure.
Does that make something a good movie? Not necessarily. But I consider myself really not to be in a very good position to be able to answer that because of those biases I have. It is the director's first film, and it has that feel. I had a lot of issue with who the movie wants me to be on the side of in some ways. It had some amazing moments, and it had a couple of really great scenes that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I don't know that it holds together real well. It's not Frankenstein at all. And in fact, this bothers me because our protagonist wants to cure death. And there's a certain point in the movie where she sees someone dying and getting defibrillated. And there's a lot of imagery that you can tell, like it's giving her the idea to use electricity, which is a very Frankenstein thing. I know not in the original, but yeah, whatever. Yes, we've had that. But anyway, here's my problem with it. The journal where she's writing all of her experiments and everything, she hand wrote the title on it, says The Modern Prometheus. And I'm like, so we're saying this is a universe in which Frankenstein is a thing, and it never occurred to her to use electricity. But she does know about it because she named her own studies after it.
Or maybe
So she legitimately loved that book and was like, they made movies about it.
or maybe that book never existed and she just that's a universe where she came up with that modern Prometheus idea on her own.
Or maybe that, which somehow is the stupidest of the possibilities. I'm like a Prometheus, but
she's like Mary Shelley and Victor Frankenstein all in one.
And it's just there's a lot of characters' motivations and intelligence levels vary wildly depending on what they need to do in the moment. I don't know. I think it's potentially a very interesting movie. And if you are one of those psychos who will watch a movie not because you'll want to be entertained or even because you want to be educated, but just because you want to look at it through a lens of certain critique, aka, I guess, jazz. Check it out. It has some great performances in it, and I'm excited to see what this director has in the future, and actually several of the actors in it, what they have in the future. But yeah, I hated it for very personal reasons. And I don't know if it's good. I'm not sure. But we also saw another movie that I do know is not good.
Okay.
We saw Totally Killer.
Never heard of it.
That's okay. That's definitely fine. It's brand new. It dropped days ago.
Oh.
It's an Amazon original.
Oh.
And here's what it is. Last year, Amazon put out a movie called My Best Friend's Exorcism. I believe I talked about it.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I did not enjoy that movie. It was a sort of horror comedy set in the 80s. I wasn't like bothered. It just wasn't good. This is this year's that. I don't want to call them red notices because for the most part, they do not have the star power to be a red notice.
Right.
But this one had more star power in that the lead is Kiernan Shipka, is that her name? Sabrina, the Chilling Witch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which extra sucks because she is an amazing actor. And I've seen her in some great stuff. Check out The Black Coat's Daughter. If you haven't seen The Black Coat's Daughter, speaking of good horror movies, watch The Black Coat's Daughter. She's in that, and she's amazing. And then she went and she did Sabrina, and I'm like, and now I'm like, oh, I guess that's the direction she's going. Wow, that's such a waste of talent, but I'll bet she'll make a lot of money. So anyway, this one, she's the protagonist, and she's a teenager, and she lives in a small town where 35 years ago there was a serial killer who killed 3 girls. They were all 16 and they were stabbed 16 times, and he wore a distinctive mask, whatever. Now, 35 years later, the killer shows up again and kills our protagonist Small. This is not the premise of the movie yet. We haven't even gotten there. On an unrelated note.
Oh, unrelated note.
Our protagonist's best friend is building a time machine. Because our protagonist's best friend's mother, when she was younger, tried to build one and almost succeeded, the friend thinks. And so she's trying to sort of finish what her mother started. Through some hilarious hijinks, our protagonist is sent back 35 years right before the original murders. And so she needs to find the killer to hopefully stop those murders, but specifically stop the killer from 35 years later killing her mom. And she does that via the help of the original time traveling creating mom, who basically is a stand-in for the best friend, but 35 years earlier. And part of the hijinks is all the girls that got killed were part of a clique of mean girls, of which there were 4. The 3 that got killed and her mom, who she now has to interact with. So
and this is why her mom gets killed later, because she was part of that clique.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. There are clues and bits in here. The solution, I'd say, doesn't make sense, but mostly just doesn't matter. None of it, like, you cannot think about anything that's happening. Honestly, the part that bothered me most in a movie with shitty time travel is how much our protagonist is an idiot. Mostly in the fact that she's constantly referencing ideas and concepts and quotes and films from much later. Like, she knows she's in 1987 And even after days of being in 1987, she like makes reference to things that no one there would know. Like constant is forgetting she's in 1987 or something. Here's what I will say. I liked it better than My Best Friend's Exorcism. Not a lot, but a little bit. But given it has shitty time travel in it, which, as you know, is the thing I am most allergic to.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, cat hair, and going outside. It should get bonus points for managing to like it better than the other one. Plus, even with bad time travel.
It's called what again?
Totally Killer. Get it? Because it's a killer, but also that's like an 80s thing. And I will say, as I too often have to say these things, it has a pretty banging soundtrack. And I don't want to say it has deep 80s cuts, but it has 80s it has shallow 80s cuts as opposed to surface one. Like it has some tracks that I would not have guessed they would have put in. They didn't just like grab any hit from the 80s. Like it's better than
I mean, you and I don't like time travel.
I don't like bad time travel. It's not my fault that almost no one has ever done good time travel.
I don't. Well, okay. Well, I'm pretty convinced there's no such thing as good time travel, but
there is. It's called Gargoyles. Disney's Gargoyles.
Right. That's right. That's right. You've said that. But
also Primer. Sorry.
Also what?
But also Primer.
Abby likes time travel though. I mean,
okay.
She likes it. So I wonder if she'd like.
I mean, I've never done it. I might like it too.
No, she likes stories with it. I mean, I think she agrees with me all the things that are problematic about it, but she doesn't mind that.
I like it conceptually. I just can't cope with it.
I think she likes it. I think a lot of people who like time travel are perfectly aware of the problems. They just think that's a fair price to pay for the fun things, you know. Like
but here's the thing. Gargoyles proved it is very, very easy to do good time travel. Here's how you do good time travel. There's only one timeline. If you travel in time and you change things, that's because you always traveled in time and changed things.
Yeah.
So you don't show up and convince your granddad to do something, whereas in the first time that didn't happen. No, your granddad was always approached by a stranger who convinced them to do something.
Right.
It just turns out it was you from the future and you didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
Everything works if you just have one timeline, one consistent. Or as Xanatos, voiced by Jonathan Frakes, said when Goliath, voiced by Keith David, said, I've got half a mind to leave you here, he said, but you wouldn't because you didn't. Time travel's funny that way.
So it's really two things. It's one line and you really can't change it.
Yeah. That's why it's one line. If you changed it, it would be a different line.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's how it is. If you think you can, if you're trying to change it, you are actually just bringing about the things that made it the way it is. Or it was always changed and you just weren't aware of how it was actually
working. Correct.
This movie does not do that. Spoiler alert. Also, this movie is so fucked up that it has to give itself an out, which is during the resolution, one of the characters says, time travel's weird. And that's their explanation for just all the shit that doesn't make sense.
But of course, you're right about what you're saying about gargoyles, and that's really the only sensible way to do it. But for a lot of people, that would take away their whole reason for doing it, right? They want the person to be able to change something. They want, what's the whole reason?
Are terrible. I hate to tell you this. Your wife is terrible. But the good news is, although this makes her a terrible person, it's the only thing. She's a perfect individual other than this one thing. So it kind of balances, but she's terrible.
Yeah. Well,
anyway. But yeah, anyway, my point was Totally Killer is fine. if you're bored, whatever.
But that's another thing
It's not
is
an
when
anti-movie.
we're looking for things around Halloween, so we're looking for something to creep us out, not to gross us out.
Yeah,
And
yep,
we don't really want a comedy either.
yep.
I mean,
The Black Coat's Daughter.
I
Write it
think we've
down.
no, I think we've seen that.
We'll watch it again because you can't remember.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Um,
I'm going to make a note of it right now.
they're good,
But
but also just listen to me more and make notes. I see a lot of horror movies, and some of them suck, but some of them are really good.
right, but like I said, they have to be creepy, not gross, and they can't be funny.
Yes, and when I talk about them, I always say if something is gross, or if, and also if it's funny, or if it's trying.
Well, right, but so we have often watched stuff based on your recommendation.
And how's that
And
worked out for you?
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, it clearly had a huge impact. That's the important thing.
I mean, I okay, I'll say this. I know there have been times where it worked out great, and I should have told you that. But there have
But
also
also
been,
tell me when it works out great, and tell me when it
and when it
doesn't, and
doesn't,
why
right?
it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
then I can, because that's the thing. I am one of those people. Everything I say in this podcast notwithstanding, I am one of those people who doesn't recommend media full stop.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
recommend it for this person or this type of person. And so if I learn more about what kind of thing you're looking for based on your reaction
Right.
to other things I've
Yeah,
said,
I should be better. I should do better
hopefully
about giving you feedback
there
on
you go.
that. Because
Also, just in general, you should remember when you've seen movies.
well, I think I think there is a little bit of a pattern to the times when it doesn't work out, and it's always a situation where you were absolutely right to think it had elements that we like. It just didn't have enough of them, right? Or the balance just wasn't exactly
Well,
right.
and you and I have both run into that, and I guess anybody can, but you and I can fixate in
Yeah.
films,
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah.
and bad. In
Right,
fact, I think
exactly.
you more often tend to fixate on things that are good. I tend to fixate on things that are bad. So a movie can be great, but I'm like, this one thing, I couldn't stop being annoyed the whole time. So
Yeah,
good are
it's
things
pretty
to
much
watch out
always
for.
just been a
But
case of the the ingredients were just not balanced exactly right to hit or
yeah,
not. I think that's usually what it is. But you usually, I'm pretty sure you almost always have the right ingredients. It's just, which thing was, maybe there wasn't enough of that thing and the other stuff couldn't overcome it or that kind of thing. But I'll probably try to do a better job of letting you know, because I know that you would take that feedback well.
did you watch Lucky on
No,
Shudder?
we haven't watched that yet.
I think you should watch that. I'm not even going to say you'll like it or you won't like it. I just think you should watch it. I think you will find it enriching to have watched. Because I still maintain I'm not sure it's a very good movie, but it's a really awesome concept that is very original and very, like, I'm super into the fact that a movie was made about this. I mean, it's not, and it's definitely not bad, but it has a lot of first time filmmaking stuff going on and you can feel it. Um, but it's just so neat.
Yeah, I like a film that if it's rough around the edges or it's a first time filmmaker or whatever, but the ideas are strong. I like that. I really like that.
Yeah. By the way, I should just throw, I don't know that there is anyone who listens to this podcast that falls into this category, but if, like me, you have a thing for low budget, pretty shitty found footage, paranormal investigation, horror kind of things. I watched a movie called The Devil's Toy Box the other night, and yeah, I mean, it's bad, it's confusing, it's poorly made, it's very low budget, but that's true of literally all of the movies like this. Within those movies, sometimes they are, I'm so sorry I spent any time watching. This one was no bad.
Hmm.
It's got it's got some twists I didn't see coming, which is a very rare for this. And it borrowed, I think, from a lot of better movies in a way that helped it. I mean, so yeah, you can check it out. the Devil's Toy Box. So yeah, I don't know if there's anybody out there who fits that description, but if you are, that's one of the less
Somebody must,
terrible.
because they keep making them. And you like them.
I don't
So.
know that they make them because people watch them. I think they make them because they're very cheap to make and the people want them. I don't know, but yeah. See, now you're telling me this, though. I could probably curate a list for you a little bit more. But Trish and I are going to be watching a shit ton this month, so I'll be coming back with whatever we got. Let's do email. We didn't do email last one. We're already over time, but
Okay.
I feel bad.
Jazz
Yes,
has a question.
Taz?
I'm currently teaching a course that includes a lot of Japanese stories, including anime, and have been thinking about why anime is so popular in the US. Do you think there are things about Japanese culture which serve as a sort of counterbalance to aspects of American culture, which American audiences might be looking for? So, my experience with Japanese animation, and it goes back to my childhood, actually. And the reason it
Few
was
people know this. When William was a toddler, he was a Japanese animator.
it was popular then for a variety of reasons that I don't think are particularly cultural. It was a lot of animator. You could get animation done cheaper over there, so it wasn't really that Americans liked it or didn't like it. It's most of the animation done for a long time just was from there. But also, though, I think if there was any cultural aspect to it, also when I was younger and a little bit before my time, one of the things that made Marvel Comics really popular was, I mean, they really revolutionized, splash pages and characters having low-key conversations, but they're swinging through the city while they're doing it and have these crazy poses and stuff. And I think
I read that issue of Spider-Man meets Tarzan as well.
and I don't think American animators were doing that in a way that Japanese animators were. And I don't know if the Japanese animators were influenced by what was going on in America or vice versa, or not at all. They just kind of separately, but I do remember the Japanese, you could tell which cartoon, just visually, you could tell which ones were made in Japan. And if you couldn't, you saw the credits at the end, and that was made it pretty obvious. But they were very, very punchy and had more color and action and stuff in them, which I do think appealed to kids in my generation. Not to me particularly. I didn't actually like Japanese animation when I was a kid, but I knew a lot of other kids who did.
In the back with his corn husk dolls.
I know a lot of other kids did, and
this one is named Billiam, and he has 1,000 friends.
And I think there just was in that there was a sort of in the, I don't know, zeitgeist at that time, an interest in doing comic book art and animation in sort of a big, flashy, loud sort of way, which, I mean, if you compare Speed Racer that I was watching as a kid to any animation now, it probably looks tame by comparison, but it was pretty loud and dramatic in comparison to a lot of, to Scooby-Doo or the Jetsons or anything like that, or even to Warner Brothers cartoons. So then after Japanese animation sort of got established, I think in kids my generation and maybe a little earlier, now I just think it's just part of, it's just what we expect. And some people probably have nostalgia for that style. I do think that that there are cultural hallmarks to anime that's different from American made animation that people have grown also to really sort of appreciate and get into. I mean, Mark, you know, his interest in anime, as I recall, he and I talked about it because he sort of became interested in Japanese culture in general, and he's visited Japan, I'm quite sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I think Japanese animation has sort of been a gateway for some people into into that whole culture, and I think Japanese culture has had an impact on American culture. Well, in a lot of ways, of course. There's people who immigrate here from Japan have had an impact, like all immigrants have. But
At
I
least
think
like four.
I think Japan has made an impact through that. As I don't feel immediately like I can identify something that would appeal to Americans because we're Americans and there's something maybe lacking in our culture that culture has. I don't sense that it's anything like that. I think it's just the normal, this culture interacts with this culture and things happen.
Well,
And
and the anime boom of these days is not at all limited to Japan and the US. And there's a lot of non-English speaking countries. There's a huge market of Spanish language anime dubs and things like that too.
yeah,
Um
I
every
just think that
everything you said is wrong.
that's just my take on it.
I do think it's an interesting argument, especially in light of children when we were children being into there was something to be said for like it was edgier, it was more grown up. I remember feeling that way, both
Yeah.
in terms of like this is, you know, darker shit that maybe if my parents knew I was watching, they'd be less into or whatever. But also these are more involved, detailed stories, which was also because I was a lore hound even at a very young age. But I don't think that takes into account the modern boom of anime and the fact that it is very multi-generational and there are a lot of
Mm.
adults who like it and kids today who like it, and some of the adults who like it didn't like it when they were kids or things like that. So full disclosure, I have no idea what I'm talking about and I have nothing to back this up. I
Well,
say
me
this because
neither.
I'm going to go hard on my opinion here. This is a
Oh, okay.
hot take.
All right.
There is an art style thing. There is a specific art style and aesthetic to anime that some people just like.
Yeah, sure.
And that's fine and that's great. And we see that because we now see Western animation adopting that and so forth and all of that. There are cultural things. I think again, those aren't necessarily going to be society to society comparable. It's not going to be like Americans like this thing about Japanese culture.
Hmm.
I think it's to some people's taste. I also think if you watch something that has different cultural stuff in it, it starts to bleed in. The more I've always been something of an Anglophile, but the more I watch British stuff, the more a lot of cultural elements from them appeals to me or seeps into me. Here is the main thing I think it is. It is very dopamine based. Anime is hyper melodrama and or hyper action.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anime is melodrama on a scale that soap operas wish they had, and it is frequently action on a scale that the best CG artists wish they had, because in animation you can make all sorts of shit happen that couldn't happen otherwise. And those two things are very popular with people in different groups, and if you can combine them, it's really big. That I know that's what sucked me into a lot of anime is I am very susceptible to melodrama. As I have gotten older, I have found I don't enjoy that. I enjoy like I get addicted to it. I don't necessarily enjoy it. And
Mm.
also I have learned as I get older that my brain, and I think a lot of people, my brain misconstrues hyper constant melodrama with a deep, robust story, and the two are not the same.
No.
But this is how, I mean, this is how I was so into Power Rangers. This is why I was so into Sailor Moon, which I'm not saying is bad, but in retrospect, I'm not sure why. But it was just because things be happening all the time, and
And they
twists and
seem
turns and
so
bounds.
serious and so
And
important.
yeah, and when you add into it that, like, not only do you want to know if these two people are going to be a couple, because they have gone back and forth on it so much, and several of them died and came back and shit, but also whether or not they end up a couple actually determines whether or not this and 4 other galaxies explode. Like, that's some shit there. Now,
Yeah.
that's my short hot take, on which I cannot back up at all. If we really wanted to tuck into this, and we don't, we get a lot more into why is anime like that, and what is different about the Japanese that anime rose whereas Looney Tunes rose here, and also on a different scale, because even back in the day, anime was not strictly a kids thing in Japan. And I do think
Looney Tunes wasn't a kids thing here either.
that's true, but then later cartoons became more of that kind of thing.
Right.
I do think somebody with better education, more tact and sensitivity, and way less white than me could broach, and has broached, the idea that Hiroshima and Nagasaki and World War II in general created cultural impacts that affected Japanese art and media in huge ways that we are still feeling today.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's true.
Some of them are obvious, Godzilla and Akira and things like that, but also, like, so much more anime is for example tied into themes about war than Western animation. So much more. And also in a very different style. In Western animation, it is frequently very patriotic, not just American patriotic. Like Brits, same. I mean, just Western in general, it tends to be much more patriotic. Looking at the tragedies of war in an animated medium is something that the Japanese have been doing for much longer and much more seriously. So I think that's a very interesting conversation. But as to why Westerners like anime, it's because it's an action movie and a soap opera together, and those are two of the most addictive kinds of things. And also, you can do it with a really cool art style. So, don't need a class, Jazz. You're wasting the college's money. You're a fraud. You're just killing time so you can watch Graveyard of the Fireflies and My Neighbor Totoro and get paid for it. Like, stop lying to people. This is your call out, Jazz. We all know you're just scamming them so that you can enjoy your favorite media and get paid to yell at kids about it. Stop screwing around. Get real.
I mean, so, not long ago, Abby realized that when she was looking for, well, this time of year, sometimes looking for horror too, that she'd come across stuff made in Korea, and something about it appealed, like even more than some of the Western stuff. I don't know if she or I ever figured out what that was. Sometimes it's just really hard to put your finger on what exactly. I mean, there's clearly a pattern, right? Like, you're not picking the stuff that was made in Spain or the stuff that was made in France or even the stuff that is Japanese. You're consistently
Something
picking
very
this thing
specific
that's
there,
Korean,
yeah.
and it's consistently really entertaining you. So there's obviously something about it being Korean, that's something about the way the Koreans do it makes a difference. We don't know what it is, but it's a fairly consistent theme with her. I don't know. I can't figure it out. Like, so they had this one that she really liked called, was it called The Kingdom? Have you heard
Was
of it?
that the zombie one in the 18th
Yeah.
century? Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Well, and Korean drama is a thing in the same way that Americans have soap operas,
mm,
but Spanish speaking countries have telenovelas, and those are a different thing.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
same
yeah.
way, Korean drama is a category, and it's
Mm,
not just dramas that are in Korean. It's a genre that is based around that culture. And
well,
that specifically is a thing. I mean, every country has their dramas, but Korean drama is like you can go to Netflix and there'll be a section called Korean drama.
I guess part of it is, maybe part of it is that it really had an epic scale, and it's hard to find horror that's done in an epic scale, right? I mean, like you
Yeah.
said, it's usually low budget. It's really happening in a house or
Or
whatever.
or it's event heroes.
But this is like, all over the place, huge
Yeah.
set pieces and tons of extras who are playing zombies and stuff. It's pretty. I mean, I don't know anyone else who's doing that. So
Sorry, anytime I think about extras playing zombies, I think back to an old Key and Peele sketch involving them playing extras on The Walking Dead, and it just makes me giggle every time. On a completely unrelated note, but only because I wasn't listening to anything you said. Um, y'all watched Over the Garden Wall?
we've seen some of it, but not since you talked about it. No.
Well, if you've seen some of it, I mean, you get it, so it must
Yeah.
not be your thing. But
Well, no,
it's not
I don't.
ongoing or anything, so
Right.
it's
I don't
just
remember why we
whatever.
stopped watching it. It wasn't because we didn't like it. Something interrupted and we've just never gotten back to it.
Well, I mean, that's spooky. It's not scary, but it's spooky, and they're very short. It's a fun time. It's like 10 episodes of like 10 minutes each or something. You can check that out. We're way over time, and I'm sick of your face. Um, so yeah, things are gonna happen in the next 3 days. Sorry, or the last 3 days. We had no control over that. If it's interesting enough, maybe we'll talk about it next Monday. We don't know, but this is where we live now, so deal with it. If you've got good, oh my god, no, I'm gonna do it. If you have scary, spooky media that you think William and or I will like, go to the blog, themagicsonghat.com. If you're Azure Talent, I might not listen to you, but we'll see. Give it a shot. I would rather have more suggestions than fewer suggestions. I like having my options. And also
Yep.
I will watch some absolute garbage. So also go to smashwords.com and buy my book. It's called Odd Wings, ODD Wings. Check it out. Go to aethertheater.com. Do whatever William tells you to do there. I don't remember. Do a little dance, make a little love. I don't know, something like that. Also, then come back next week because we're keeping the hype train going because it's hoodie season, motherfuckers! Woo! My phone is so big.